Advanced Financial Modeling, Topic 3, VBA for Finance. For references, the Benninga textbook is very good. It gives you several chapters to introduce you to VBA, Chapter 36, Chapter 37, using VBA arrays, and Chapter 39, VBA objects. The first learning objective is the basics of VBA, which you've already done, but it's a good review. So we'll talk about the basics of creating, commenting, and inserting a VBA program. So the first thing we talk about is what is a VBA program? Well, you can think about it as a user-defined function. Excel has a lot of built-in functions like standard deviation and average, but you can create your own functions in VBA programming language. Once you create it, you can then use those functions in that workbook. However, unlike built-in functions, the user-defined functions are only attached to that workbook and are saved in modules. Modules are accessed in the VBA editor. I usually do that by using the hotkey Alt F11, or you can go to the VBA Developer tab and select VBA. A user-defined function has at least 3 obligatory statements. The first statement has the word function. You then give it a function name, and in brackets you put in the parameters, say the inputs. You then have some programming lines, at least one, usually making a calculation, and then you have a closing line, which is just the word end function. So we're going to go to Excel. We're going to do Alt F11 or use VBA editor to insert or to access the VBA environment. And we're going to write that function, or just look at that function since I already put it in the module, CAPM. So I'm going to go to the spreadsheet. And you can see here I'm looking to try to create a CAPM function. That CAPM function is going to have 3 parameters: the risk-free rate, RM, and beta. And we're going to go, I'm going to hit Alt F11 or Developer VBA and go to the bottom of Module 1. I've already inserted a module for you, and this has all the programs we're going to use for today's lesson. And you can see I have CAPM. Function CAPM, 3 parameters, RF, beta, and RM. Notice that's not market risk premium, that is RM. I then have a comment line here. I have a single quote that says CAPM computes expected asset return. I then dim MRP. I'm going to show you what that means later, but I am going to leave that as this is one way of declaring a variable. It's an optional way of doing it. I'm going to create a variable called MRP, and then I'm going to say MRP is RM minus RF, so the market risk premium is RM minus RF. Notice I've also added a comment at the end of the line by using a single quote. MRP is the market risk premium. And then I calculate CAPM. That gives the function value, since the function is called CAPM, and I say CAPM is risk-free rate plus beta times MRP. All right, we'll talk more when we talk about declaring variables, but that dim statement is optional in certain cases, most cases, and we'll talk about that later. So I have this function called CAPM. I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet. I can then insert the function by clicking on this FX, selecting user defined, and I'm going to look for CAPM. There it is. And I'm going to put in the risk-free rate plus the beta and then the RM and hit OK. Got 9%. Let's make sure that's correct. I always try to make sure it's correct. It's risk-free rate plus beta times the difference between RM and risk-free rate. So it looks like I should have gotten a value of 9. So I'll just call that my check. All right, so that's CAPM. A warning, you want to make sure that when you save a workbook, a newly created workbook, make sure you save it as a macro-enabled workbook. The default is just a worksheet, XLS, but you want to make sure it's a macro-enabled workbook. Otherwise, your whole module goes away and all your functions are lost. So you got to make sure you take care of that. All right, so there you go. We've created a function. Notice the one I'm showing here doesn't have the dim statement. There's no dim statement. So let's talk about that one a little bit later, okay? So in this topic, all we did is we talked about the basics of writing a VBA program, the 3 obligatory statements, how you get to the Excel's VBA editor, and how to insert the function.